I have stood on the broken bones of two ruined cities. I have carried the ashes of people I loved in jars no bigger than my fist. I have watched the sky split open twice in my lifetime and rain fire on everything I called home. My name is Admiral Kalen Drak, and I am here to tell you what happens when a peaceful species runs out of patience. It started long before me, of course. 30 years ago, humanity made first contact with the wider galaxy. We were so excited. I remember being a boy, sitting on my father's shoulders in a crowd outside the United Nations building, watching the sky as the first alien shuttle descended through the clouds. We thought it was the beginning of something beautiful. We thought the universe had friends waiting for us. We were children in every way that mattered. The Galactic Concord had existed for over 200,000 years. More than 4,000 species were members. They had laws, trade agreements, councils, and rotating seats of power. When humanity applied for observer status, they granted it the way you might let a stray dog sit on your porch. We were tolerated, never respected. Our civilization was only a few thousand years old. To species that measured their histories in hundreds of millennia, we were infants. They smiled at us the way adults smile at a toddler who says something accidentally clever. We did not mind. We were just happy to be there. Then the Valori Dominion turned its eyes toward our little corner of the galaxy. The Valori were old, powerful, and proud. Their empire covered 400 star systems. They had ruled for 60,000 years, and in all that time, no one had ever made them answer for anything. They took what they wanted, and the Concord looked the other way, because the Valori were too useful and too strong to challenge. 12 years ago, they came for Earth the first time. They called it a territorial correction. 300 of their warships entered our solar system, destroyed our orbital stations, and bombarded 4 cities from space. 18 million people were displaced. 2 million were lost. When it was over, we sent a formal protest to the Galactic Concord. We begged for intervention. We cited their own laws, their own treaties, their own promises. The Concord voted to observe the situation. That is a polite way of saying they watched us suffer and did absolutely nothing. We rebuilt. Humans are stubborn that way. We buried our people, cleared the rubble, and put our cities back together piece by piece. We told ourselves it was over. We told ourselves it would not happen again. We were wrong. 4 years ago, the Valori returned. This time, they brought 2,000 warships. They did not call it a correction. They called it a permanent integration. They bombed coastlines until the oceans boiled at the edges. They targeted atmosphere processors on 3 continents. Children suffocated in their schools. Entire neighborhoods were buried under collapsed buildings. My daughter, Lena, was 7 years old. She was in her classroom in Sao Paulo when the ceiling came down. I was in orbit, fighting a battle I could not win, and I did not even get to hold her hand. 11 million names are carved into the memorial wall in Sao Paulo now. Lena Drak is one of them. When it was finally over, when the Valori grew bored and withdrew, we went to the Concord again. This time, we did not beg. We presented evidence, testimony, recordings. We asked for justice, for sanctions, for anything at all. The elder species debated for 6 hours and then voted, once again, to continue monitoring the situation. The Valori ambassador, Exarch Thyon, sat across the chamber from our delegation and smiled through the entire proceeding. That was the day humanity changed. Not loudly, not with some dramatic declaration. We simply went quiet. The galaxy barely noticed. We stopped attending Concord sessions. We pulled our trade envoys home. We closed our borders and told the galaxy we needed time to heal. They believed us because it was easier to believe us than to wonder what we were actually doing. What we were doing was building. For 4 years, every resource, every mind, every ounce of human determination was poured into a single question. How do we make sure this never happens again? Not just to us, but to anyone the galaxy decides is too small to protect. We did not rebuild what we had lost. We built what we would need to make sure we never lost anything again. I will not pretend it was noble. It was grief, wearing the mask of engineering. Every scientist who worked through the night was fueled by a memory of someone they had buried. Every engineer who solved an impossible equation did it because the alternative was lying down and accepting that the universe was a place where your daughter could be crushed under a schoolroom ceiling and nobody in the stars would care. Grief is the most powerful engine humanity has ever built. 4 years passed. Then, one morning, I received orders to put on my dress uniform and travel to the Galactic Concord Station. Earth was sending a single representative, and apparently, I was the one they chose. I think they picked me because I had nothing left to lose, and therefore nothing to hold me back from saying exactly what needed to be said. The Concord Station was the size of a small moon. I walked through corridors filled with species that had been building empires when my ancestors were painting animals on cave walls. Some of them looked at me with curiosity, others with pity, and a few with open amusement. I heard the whispers, the short-lived ones, the scarred species. I kept walking. The chamber was enormous, filled with thousands of delegations arranged in concentric rings. I found humanity's seat, a small desk near the back. Across the hall, Exarch Theon sat in the Valori section, draped in ceremonial armor that probably cost more than my entire ship. He smiled at me, the same smile. Then he stood and addressed the assembly. In the most polished diplomatic language I have ever heard, he announced that the Valori Dominion was reclaiming sovereign territorial interest in the Sol system. It was beautiful, the way he wrapped a death sentence in silk. A third invasion, dressed up in formal vocabulary, the chamber murmured. A few elder species nodded approvingly. Nobody objected. I requested the floor. I did not shout. I did not slam my fist on the podium. I spoke quietly, almost gently, because the things I had to say were heavy enough without raising my voice. I told them about Sao Paulo. I told them about the children. I told them about the oceans that boiled and the skies that turned black. I told them that humanity had asked for help twice, and twice the Concord had chosen to watch. Then I told them what we had done with our grief. I did not give details. I did not explain our technology or reveal our capabilities. I simply said that Earth was issuing its first and final warning to the Valori Dominion and to anyone else who was listening. Attack Earth again, I said, and your empire ends. Not your fleet, not your military, your empire. Every colony, every station, every world you have ever claimed. We will unmake you so completely that the galaxy will debate whether you ever existed at all. The chamber went dead silent. Then Theon laughed. A big, theatrical, confident laugh. Several other delegations chuckled along with him. The short-lived species was making threats. How adorable. I left the station without another word. 3 months later, the Valori Armada entered our solar system. 12,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled against a single species in recorded galactic history. Theon broadcast on an open channel so the entire galaxy could watch. He wanted an audience for our extinction. I stood on the bridge of the EDS Prometheus, the flagship of Earth's fleet. Our fleet consisted of 46 ships. That is not a typo. 46. When the Valori scanned us, they must have thought it was a joke. Theon opened communications. 46 ships, he said, still laughing. This is your answer? This is your last chance to turn around, I replied. He gave the order to fire. 12,000 warships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, kinetic rounds, plasma torpedoes, weapons that could crack a planet's crust. All of it raced toward our 46 ships, and all of it vanished. Every single shot hit what looked like empty space around our ships and simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no deflections, no shields glowing under impact. The weapons just stopped being real. We called it cascade nullification. It was based on physics that every advanced species in the galaxy had deemed too unstable and too dangerous to pursue. They were right. It was unstable. It was dangerous. But humanity had spent 4 years with nothing to lose and everything to prove, and we had made it work. The Valori fired again, and again. Nothing reached us. Then our 46 ships opened. Each vessel split apart along its spine, and from inside, thousands of strike drones poured into space like seeds from a broken pod. They were not controlled by artificial intelligence. Every single drone was linked to a human mind through neural connection, piloted by a volunteer sitting in a secure pod deep beneath Earth's surface. Every pilot had a name on that memorial wall. Every pilot had a reason. 12,000 Valori warships faced 180,000 drones, each one guided by a human heart full of memory and resolve. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the Valori Armada was gone. Not destroyed in a spectacular fashion, but systematically and precisely disabled. We targeted engines, weapons, and command systems. We gave every crew the chance to evacuate before their ships went dark. We were not butchers. We were not what they had made us into. Not yet. I opened a communication channel to every frequency in the galaxy. Military, civilian, diplomatic. Every species that was watching, and they were all watching. We warned you, I said. Over the next 72 hours, we activated the second thing we had built. For 3 years, unmanned probes had been quietly seeding Valori space with devices we called fold space beacons. Tiny, undetectable, patient. Now, each beacon opened a pinpoint passage through folded space, and through each passage, a single device traveled to the heart of a Valori star system. We called them stellar cascade devices. They did not destroy stars. They destabilized them, gently and irreversibly, forcing each star to expand and overheat until the worlds around it became uninhabitable. One by one, the stars of the Valori Dominion began to change. We were not monsters. Every system received a warning 1 hour before activation. We opened refugee corridors. We provided coordinates for safe harbor. We gave every civilian the chance to leave, but we did not stop. Colony after colony, station after station, shipyard after palace, the Valori Dominion was taken apart. A 60,000-year-old empire spanning 400 star systems ceased to exist in 3 days. The Galactic Concord descended into chaos. 4,000 species realized that the small, scarred, short-lived species they had ignored for 3 decades had just done something no civilization in 200,000 years of galactic history had ever done. We had erased an empire, and we had done it in less time than it takes most species to schedule a committee meeting. I was summoned back to the Concord station. This time, no one was laughing. The corridors that had once buzzed with whispered jokes about humanity were silent. The delegations that had nodded approvingly when Thean announced his third invasion now stared at me with wide eyes. I saw fear. I saw respect. I could not tell the difference anymore. I stood at the same podium. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I was so tired that my hands were shaking, and I gripped the edges of the podium so no one would see. Humanity takes no pride in what we have done, I said. Every person who participated in this will carry the weight of it for the rest of their lives. We did not want this. We asked for help. We asked you to stop them. You chose to watch. I looked around the chamber. Thousands of eyes, thousands of species, all of them silent. You taught us something, I continued. You taught us that the galaxy does not protect the ones who cannot protect themselves. It watches them suffer and calls it policy. So we stopped being unable to protect ourselves, and we want you to understand clearly. We did not build these weapons for the Valori. We built them for anyone, anywhere, whoever looks at our world and sees something they can take. I let the silence hold for a long moment. Humanity will never send a second warning. I left the station and went home to Earth. I went back to Sao Paulo. I stood in front of the memorial wall, the same wall I had stood before 4 years ago, and I looked at those 11 million names. The sun was setting, and the light turned the black stone golden. I reached out and touched the letters of her name, Lena Drack, 7 years old. She loved butterflies and the color yellow, and asking questions I could not answer. The galaxy calls us monsters now. I have heard the whispers traveling through every trade route and diplomatic channel. Humanity, the species that unmade an empire. Humanity, the ones you do not provoke. They say our name the way you say the name of a storm, something you respect only because you fear it. Maybe they are right to call us that. Maybe we did become the very thing the galaxy should have protected us from. I think about that every night when I close my eyes and see Lena's face, and I wonder if she would recognize what her father became in her name. But I also know this. If one species, just one, had stood up in that Concord chamber and said, "Leave them alone. They deserve to live in peace," none of this would have happened. If one voice had spoken for us, we would never have needed to speak for ourselves in the language of falling stars. They call us monsters now. Maybe they are right. But my little girl would still be alive if someone, anyone, had called us worth saving instead.